Welcome to the Simply Financial podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Calandra. For a long time now, I like to ask people how much money they would need to be rich. Now, I sometimes will do this in my role as a certified financial planner in front of clients and or prospects. But much more often, I'll do that in social settings with friends, family, just people you kind of meet. And I find it fascinating. Of course, as a certified financial planner, I'm a financial geek, but I find it amazing how people struggle with this seemingly direct question. I also find it odd that there's such a struggle given the importance of money and how it's ever present in our lives and how we go to work for years on end to bring money into the household and try and build wealth and try and make smart financial decisions. And we don't even really have a definition of how we would actually, quote unquote, win. It's a complicated question, though. What's the definition? Are we defining it by net worth, which is found by adding up all your assets, subtracting out all of your liabilities, and that gives you your net worth number? Or are we solving for income? If you made X number of dollars, would that mean that you would define yourself as rich regardless of your assets? Is it a combination of the two? Some people will say it's their overall well-being. I'm going to throw out the overall well-being because that kind of is a cop-out. We could all agree that there are more important things than money, but money is not unimportant. So I'm not going to accept, for the purposes of this exercise, the idea that I have no money, I have no job, but I am overall happy, so I am a rich person. No, we're narrowly going to focus on financial wealth. I'm also going to throw out income. Years ago, I read the very influential book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, plus other books he has in the series like Cash Flow Quadrant, and there are many others. He defines it as having enough assets to generate enough income passively that could satisfy and be more than what your expenses are. So I like the net worth version because that is, to me, the fairest representation of rich. So I'm doing this episode of the Simply Financial podcast because I came across a survey conducted by Charles Schwab. They reported the results in July 2020, and it speaks directly to this question that I like to playfully ask people: how much money would it take for you to consider yourself to be rich? What Charles Schwab found, and they polled individuals between the ages of 21 and 75. What they found is they looked at three different time periods: 2019, January 2020, and June 2020. And what they found is that this is a little bit of a moving target. What they found is that respondents felt that $2.3 million was rich, and secondarily noted that $1.1 million was needed to be financially comfortable. So $2.3 million to be rich, $1.1 to be financially comfortable. Now, this is representative. I know some people that would find $2.3 million to be way too little, and other people that feel as though they could only dream about having $2.3 million. And so there's a number of variable factors that play into this, but this is what the Charles Schwab surveys found. So it's basically the answer to this question that I've just been asking here and there as I meet people. What the study found in January of 2020 is that the numbers moved upward, and they moved from $2.3 million being rich in 2019 to $2.6 million being rich. And in June 2020, the number went down to $2 million. So in 19 it was $2.3 million. In 2019 it was $2.3 million. In January 2020 it was $2.6 million. And then in June it went down to $2 million. So this definitely highlights a number of things. Of course, it highlights the effects of the pandemic. People were probably more scared and worried and had lowered their expectations in June. And I think that explains the movement from 2.3 to 2.6 back down to 2 million. I think it shows clearly that it's a moving target and it's individualized and it depends on any number of factors. I don't think there's a scientifically correct or mathematically correct answer. Also, emotions factor in. If you are very optimistic about your career, you're probably more likely to choose a different number than if you are experiencing some type of financial hardship. Another factor, common sense. 2.3 million, let's use that number, might resonate differently with somebody in a high-cost location like San Francisco or New York compared to 2.3 million in lower-cost areas like, for example, Birmingham, Alabama, or Rochester, New York. But what I would like you to think about is, how do you define being rich? And are you on a path to be rich? Is it just a fantasy? Are you so far away from it that it is difficult to envision it occurring? Have you achieved it already? Or are you close? Are you on the pathway to being rich? And that doesn't mean that that has to be your number one goal in life, because there are other priorities. But I think it's an important question. It's a question that I ask for myself and I think about clients, because you want to have balance in your life. You want to balance work and play. You want to balance the need to secure your financial future with your need to enjoy the present and use your money so that you could enjoy your life today and tomorrow as you work into the long term. So I think this is a good question. And if you're listening to this, think about the question. Next time we meet or speak, let's kick around your definition of rich, and I'll share with you my definition of rich, as well as, if you're a client, if I think you're on the pathway and or have achieved being rich and wealthy. If you're not a client and you're not a prospect, I would invite you to send me your definition. You could find Elliott Wealth on Facebook. We're on Twitter. You could reach out to us via our website, www.elliottwealth.com, under the Contact Us button. Send us an email. I'd love to get your thoughts. A few things as I begin to wrap up. There's a very influential book, Your Money or Your Life. It was written some time ago. The author is Vicki Robin. I think the book was updated in 2018. And it speaks to this issue very directly. And it's a fresh, I think, look at this, because it balances the need to accumulate a certain amount of wealth and income to be secure, but that too many people think they need more than they actually do and might have misplaced priorities. I'm not suggesting I agree with everything that the author has to say, but it's a very good book, very influential. And one of the things I remember about the book is it talks about people often feeling like they don't have enough. So she advances the notion that if you had $1 million and you were asked, do you think you're rich, that you'd probably say, to be rich, I would need 2 to 3 times my $1 million. But if you're asked that question and you have a net worth of $500,000 instead of $1 million, you sort of tack on the same multiple anyway, and you would say, well, $500,000, I don't think that's rich. I need what are the numbers? Between $1 and $1.5 million. And she talked about it in terms of almost like chasing the dangling carrot, but never actually being able to get there, as a faulty line of thinking. So it's a very good book. Again, Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin. I also mentioned Robert Kiyosaki, who he's been around a while. I don't think he has a ton of new stuff these days, but his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has some very impactful views on money and wealth. And I do personally accept the notion that rich is not just a certain amount of money, but it's a calculation on how much that money could generate in passive or semi-passive income. And he would say that if you had enough passive income that it exceeded your expenses, that you were out of the rat race, that you didn't necessarily need to go grind it out at work in the trenches day in and day out, that you were out of the rat race because you had enough income passively that could meet your expenses and provide the lifestyle that you want. So I largely subscribe to that. In fact, in my house, between my wife Joelle and I, we actually use the term rat race. We've adopted that, and we consider our journey on getting out of the rat race, which I will say with a lot of pride that we are out of the rat race. We have enough income to satisfy our expenses, and we live, I think, a good balance between what is a good income relative to what is a nice lifestyle, but it's probably not as lavish as it could be or other people would want, because we find our needs are very much in line with where we are financially in terms of income and net worth. Some final thoughts about the survey. There was some good news in it. The pandemic might have a little bit of a silver lining, just a tiny silver lining, is that the results after the pandemic of the survey found that respondents were 24% more likely to make a financial plan. I think that's a very healthy and worthwhile thing. Respondents also were 20% more likely to invest in stocks. I think that is also a positive. And lastly, the good news, the silver lining from the pandemic, small silver lining, is that 36% of respondents are more likely to set money aside in an emergency fund. I think that is also very encouraging. I think the best news, though, is that before and after the pandemic, people rated relationships and health ahead of money. And I believe that is appropriate. That's how I view things. That's how I'm going to work with my clients. There are more important things than money, but money is not unimportant. So again, I would ask you to think about how much money you would need to have in net worth to consider yourself rich. Is it the 2 million? Is it the 2.3 million? Is it a number way higher than that? Is it a number lower than that, and why? If you're a client, a prospect of ours, and we connect, please bring up the question if I don't. I'd love to discuss it with you. And as I said earlier, if you haven't had contact with me and the team here at Elliott Wealth Management, please go to our website or find us on Facebook and let us know what you think your definition of rich is. I would love to hear from all of you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Simply Financial Podcast. I will be back with you on the next episode very soon.
The views expressed are not necessarily the opinion of SagePoint Financial Incorporated and should not be construed directly or indirectly as an offer to buy or sell any securities mentioned herein. Investing is subject to risks, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. Please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon when coordinated with individual professional advice. Please note, the information being provided is strictly as a courtesy. When you link to any of the websites provided here, you are leaving this website. We make no representation as to the completeness or accuracy of the information provided at these websites, nor is the company liable for any direct or indirect technical or system issues or any consequences arising out of your access to your use of third-party technologies, websites, information, and programs made available through this website. When you access one of these websites, you are leaving our website and assume total responsibility and risk for your use of the websites you are linking to. Securities and advisory services are offered through SagePoint Financial Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Insurance services offered through Elliott Wealth Management, LLC, not affiliated with SagePoint Financial.